Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Earlier today, I announced that we would be taking actions to help ensure that our schools in Tennessee are a safe place for our students and for our teachers. And the events of the last few weeks, particularly the events in Texas, have shocked our country, have caused anxiety and fear and grief and anger, and have created an awareness that there are things that we should do. And while there's tremendous disagreement across this country about what those steps are, we all feel the need to take steps. We agree on one thing, that our schools should be a safe place, that we want our kids and the teachers and the staff to know that they can go to school and come back safely. And I think the state has an obligation to practical preparedness measures to secure our schools, to recognize crisis, to provide an easy way for reports of threats or concerns. Since 2019, we have taken a prioritized, practical approach to school safety. We've doubled our investments in school safety funding since 2019 to make sure that we have buildings that have locks that work and single points of entry. Our School Resource Officer Grant Fund has put over 200 additional armed school resource officers in schools that were not there before. We've placed a premium on mental health, particularly for our children, with the investment of hundreds of millions of dollars in the Mental Health Trust Fund for kids. We have a firm foundation in our state for school safety, but we must make certain that the things that we have put in place are being carried out on the ground, and that's what this executive order is about. I'm also signing the order today to ensure that we provide the partnership and the resources to districts to make certain that they can fulfill the structure that's been put in place to make sure that school security is prioritized in the same way that fire security and other types of security are prioritized in our schools. This order requires more frequent, unannounced security assessments at every school in Tennessee to ensure that back doors are locked and that protocols are being followed. We can't take for granted the fundamental practices that make a space secure. It requires that new safety school plans and resource guides for parents and teachers be issued with firm deadlines ahead of this upcoming school year. We have to work together to do the small things right and to treat our public schools with the same vigilance that we would our homes. And school safety is a shared responsibility with law enforcement. Just this morning, I met with a number of law enforcement officials from surrounding states all across the Southeast. We talked about, and I communicated with them about our need to work together to share best practices for school safety. This is a shared responsibility with law enforcement. Our new executive order requires new active shooter training standards for law enforcement. Our Tennessee law enforcement face impossible situations, and we want to ensure that they have confidence in their training should the unthinkable happen in our state, because bravery and preparedness go hand in hand with law enforcement. The fundamentals do matter. Our state troopers will familiarize themselves with each school in their district to get to know what time the school's open and what time the school's let out, to get to know their teachers and the administrators. A sense of community is fundamental to a safer community, and we will move in that direction. And finally, I want to speak directly to parents. And I've heard from many parents with a great deal of concern. You love your kids more than anyone. You are the best advocate for your children in this situation. We need you to partner with us. Please take time to download the Safe TN app. This is a space to confidentially report concerns of violence or threats in your school or in your community. The Department of Safety monitors these reports and makes sure they go to the right place for an intervention or to law enforcement, whichever one is appropriate. If something doesn't seem quite right, reporting may be just the difference between a needed intervention or a heartbreaking situation in our state. Together we can keep schools safe. It will require the efforts of all of us together. We can be vigilant and manage to protect the innocence of our kids. I want to thank everyone that's going to be and needed to be involved in this mission, from parents to cops to teachers to law enforcement. If we work together and implement the things that we have put in place in our state and strengthen those things, and we will be strengthening them over the next months, then we can work together to ensure that our schools are in fact safe places, that our kids can go to school and come home safely. I appreciate the partnership, appreciate everyone here to deliver the message of this EO, this very important message to the parents and the teachers and the districts and the law enforcement and Tennesseans all across this state, that this is a priority for our administration and we will continue to move forward on it. Thank you very much for being here today. Happy to take your questions.
Governor, just to keep it in order, since we have a lot of folks,
let me add, by the way, we have commissioners from Department of Education, Department of Safety, Department of Mental Health, TEMA. We have leaders from the state that will all be required and be a part of our collaboration in this effort, because it is going to be a collaboration. And so any questions that you would have of them as well.
You're going to do that executive order?
You're going to sign that first? Okay, let's do that.
How about her?
Does it mention guns at all, Governor?
I'll take questions in a few minutes.
Are you trying to photo op, Governor? Are you trying to photo op when children are dying?
Thank you.
Governor Mayor, are you tired of taking photo ops? Are you tired of the cycle?
Great.
In a line, we'll start with Ms. Missy over here, and then we'll go to Channel 4 next. So, right on the left, right here.
You have a question?
Don't have a question?
No. Channel 4?
Governor, a lot of talk about how this happens, why these kind of terrible incidents are happening. Anything you guys are talking about, in other words, root causes are thrown around sometimes. Do we know why this is happening with children, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, shooting up these schools?
Yeah, I think that's certainly at the core of the distress for those who watch this unfold and who are grief-stricken and angry and frustrated, is why does this happen? And it's very complicated, as we all know, and there's no one single answer to this. I think we probably recognize that. Why an 18-year-old boy what is all behind that decision and that resolve to carry that out, no one can know. But what we believe is that we can't control what we can't control. There are things we can control and there are things we cannot. And one of the things that we can control, and that's what we're talking about today here, is how it is that we can improve the practical, pragmatic steps to making a school safer. We can control that. While there's a lot of a lack of understanding of what creates a scenario like this, and many of that's out of the control of those that are in the position that we're in, we do know we can control this, and that's why we're taking that step.
All right, Chelsea, Channel 2.
Not related to schools, but your thoughts on the two mass shootings in Chattanooga over the last week, and having contact with the police or anyone down there?
Yeah. Anytime there's a loss of life like that, it's tragic. I actually spoke with the mayor of Chattanooga, and we talked about collaborative efforts working together. Again, I spoke with law enforcement officials this morning about how it is that we can understand and strengthen violent crime. It's one of the reasons we invested $100 million in a violent crime grant fund this year that would support Chattanooga Police Department and police departments all across the state. The uniqueness of that situation is unique. There are details about what's happened in Chattanooga that are a little bit different than what's happening in other parts of our state. But we're working together with local officials to find the best way forward.
Mayor Kelly called for
I know
gun laws, though, right?
Channel 2 actually, into another
Mayor
question.
Kelly called for gun laws, though, right? Are you with him on that?
Go ahead.
Hi. So I know that you mentioned the SRO program has been expanded. Would you be open to expanding that even more in some schools in Northeast Tennessee?
Yeah, I think we've put about, I think, 213 new SRO officers in schools that didn't have them. I think one of the things you'll see, and by the way, what we've done today is really a first step. We understand that there should be an ongoing and nonstop effort to continue to find the gaps, to find the places where things are not being carried out the way they should be. As part of the strategy here is to find ways that we can get better. We don't know all of the things that should be improved, but one of them would be SROs in every school. I think you'll see a movement in that direction.
Fox 17.
I actually have an unrelated question about housing. So recently I did a story about how locals are being pushed out by out-of-town movers due to housing prices and rental costs. I've had at least 90 people come to me, all with similar issues after that story aired, that they no longer can afford to live here. Some are having to move out of state. So what will you be doing at all to help combat these issues for those struggling and help to keep locals here?
So the Tennessee Housing Development Agency is a part of developing strategy for affordable housing for people actually all over the state, but in partnership with Metro, for example, here in this city. I've actually spoken with a major developer here to talk about how it is that we can increase the numbers of affordable housing units throughout the city. It's really a state and local partnership that will require those agencies working together, and we're bringing them together to do just that.
What about those struggling short term now who need that help?
Yeah, that's part of the question is how can we do that? And as we meet together, we say short-term and long-term strategies and work on both of them.
Blaze, down there.
Yeah, is there any thought of maybe raising the age limit for who can own semi-automatic rifles, and also, any waiting periods for personally?
Yeah.
I know with background check, you basically walk out same day with.
Yeah. There, as you know, there are a lot of conversations that are happening all across the country about laws that affect gun ownership and red flag laws and waiting period laws, and there will be those conversations all across the country. We're not looking at gun restriction laws in my administration right now. There's one thing to remember: criminals don't follow laws. Criminals break laws, whether they are a gun law, a drug law. Criminals break laws. We need to make sure that we can take the steps that we control, and we can't control what they do, but we can control what we can control, and that's what we're working on today.
And then one more, if you don't mind. These shootings obviously haven't just been happening in schools. Is there any thought of opening up some protections in hospitals, churches? think about that?
Yeah, I think that our obligation, of course, is to the public facilities that house our children. Private facilities are grappling with their own security protocols and their strategies for them, but as a state, our obligation is to our public facilities, our public schools, and our children.
Adam?
I'm curious what you think are the root causes of this violence. I think people would say it was guns, but I don't think you seem to have that opinion.
Could you say that louder, Adam?
I'm curious what you think are the root causes of this violence. I think some people on the other side would say that it's guns, but I don't think you seem to have that opinion.
Yeah. I think no one knows entirely what the root cause is of a young person that chooses to walk into a school and kill 19 children. I don't think there's a clear answer to that. Clearly, there are issues around mental health. Anyone who does that has a serious mental health issue. And again, it's why we invested significantly in the Mental Health Trust Fund to provide for, and in our new school funding formula that will provide for training, for counseling, for intervention for those who have a mental health issue. It's why this SafeTN app is important for parents to see activity online that might be troubling to them, that might cause an alarm. I certainly don't have the answer for a very complicated issue like a school shooting that just occurred in Texas as to the single root cause of that. But again, to the things that we know we can do, those are the steps that we're going to take.
Kyle?
So Representative Faison told me that he believes that there should be school resource officers in every school, and then was talking about TISA funding and trying to make that happen. But in that period, he was saying the state has a responsibility to make that happen. And he even suggested using rainy day funds just to fill a gap and make sure that there's a school resource officer in every school. Is that something you support? And maybe would rainy day funds be considered for that?
Yeah. So I will say this, Kyle, that we issued this first executive order primarily to strengthen what it is that we're currently doing, the laws that are in place, making sure that we have a reporting that is current and frequent, that we have monitoring of the laws that we've already put in place for school safety. But we also agreed that over the next weeks and months, we would continue to develop ongoing strategies. And I think the SRO strategy, the additional 220 or so that we've put in place now, are because we believe that they should be there. To the degree that we've filled them up in to a certain amount of time, I don't know what that would be, but I can tell you that we have a serious intent in all of the departments of state to collaborate together to say what is the next step in the next 2 weeks, what is the next step in the next 4 weeks, how is it that we carry this out and make our schools safer, and that will clearly be one of the things that we talk about.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Independent safety assessment that you're talking about in the Department of Education asking for state dollars, how much do you think that will cost?
Yeah, I don't know. We probably haven't put a dollar amount to that. We just said it had to be done. There are some of these issues that we said they have to be done, and they have to be done now, and we will determine the details of the cost of them, but it would not impact the need for them to be done.
Ken?
I wonder, everything that you announced today, will any of this encourage or open the possibility of arming teachers? Is that something that you are directing your state agencies to explore?
It's not included in this executive order, and we have not had discussions internal about moving in that direction.
Separately, this executive order, I'm just reading from the press release, directs the Department of Commerce and Insurance to review the use of armed security guards in non-public schools. Can you explain a little bit? Are you wanting to put state school resource officers in private schools?
No, actually, what that would do is where private schools have security guards that those security guards would be required to have a certain level of training or a certain level of expertise to be a guard in that, and requiring them to make certain that their guards are appropriately guarding the kids in those public school and those private schools. But they're not state; they would not be state-funded guards.
Right. Quick question and then a quick follow-up. We've had a rash of gun violence across the country this weekend. 8 states, 16 dead, including in Chattanooga, for a second straight weekend of gun violence. 3 dead there. Is gun violence a public health crisis? Do you consider it a public health crisis at this point?
Certainly, gun violence is a serious problem in our country, and it has been a rising problem in our country. Violent crimes of many types have been rising in our country. Actually, some violent crimes have fallen and some have risen. Crime is a problem. It's one of the reasons that we believe that we should be investing more heavily in resources to combat crime. Violent Crime Intervention Fund, additional troopers, additional training resources for all of our agencies. Yes, crime is a problem, and that's why we're investing in law enforcement.
On the mental health trust fund that you just mentioned, this uses only interest income to invest in mental health needs. And right now, given the way investments are, is there any money being generated to actually do something this year? Yes,
and we've also invested in the mental health safety net for children that is separate and apart from the mental health trust fund. I could let Commissioner Williams speak to the number of programs that we have invested in for youth, but including in our new school safety funding formula, our new schools funding formula, there are additional resources for intervention, we have mental health liaisons now, and if I'm not mistaken, every county in the state, and we did not just 2 years ago, specifically for schools, mental health liaisons for schools. So we have made a significant investment and will continue to do so going forward, including the Mental Health Trust Fund.
Could Commissioner Williams speak to that?
Yeah.
And just exactly what is being done?
Would you, you step up, yeah.
Absolutely. A couple of things that...
yeah.
We have been really fortunate in this state to have a governor that said, I want to invest in kids and I want to invest in those that might have issues. Before he came in as governor, we did not have a school-based behavioral health liaison in every county. We had maybe 20. He and the legislature funded the ability for every county to have one school-based behavioral health liaison. That person helps link up to the other dollars that you added and that the legislature approved, which is the Mental Health Trust Fund. So if there's a kid in this state and their family that's uninsured, they can get services. They don't have to wait, and it's one of the simplest things you could ever do. It's a one-page, real-time, web-based application that actually gets done throughout that network of community mental health centers that we already have out in the community. The other thing that's been funded is the regional intervention programs. These are for youth and parents that are struggling with very severe issues of emotional, behavioral traumas, and that's funded and available across our state. There are many, many other programs that I could speak to, but those are probably the most important and the biggest ones that we have going right now.
Can you speak to how much money has been generated by that $250 million trust fund that is actually being used this year?
Yes, if you look at how it was laid out, there's about $25 million that can be allocated after the trustees meet and decide what that interest is. So again, what the governor did and the legislature approved, they gave us $6 million in addition to that trust fund money that we've already allocated across the state to actually fund locally based interventions based on what the strengths are in that community and the weaknesses. So we've got programs that were funded and are actually happening right now where you have mental health resources where a kid can go in and see a counselor in their school in a room that's been equipped to do that. So we've got $6 million out there right now, but I cannot speak to what the interest is because we haven't met yet as the board to actually finalize that.
Thank you so much. Sam?
Yeah, one of the reps I was talking to last week mentioned the idea of a handgun registry similar to the one they have in North Carolina. Any consideration to be given to that?
Again, Sam, I think there'll be a lot of conversations over the months across this country about what should be done. We are not talking in our administration about gun laws, gun registries. We're working on school safety and what's been laid out in this plan today. So there are no conversations or discussions about that.
One other thing, can you tell us where things lie with the higher education civics program and the high school civics program that you outlined? What do you mean a little bit about where they lie? Where are they? What's going on with them?
Penny, do you want to speak to that? Is she here? Yep. You mean what progress is being made in them?
When are they going to start? Who's going to be in charge of them?
So I can speak to the K-12 civics program. We continue to issue civics grants related to individual school and district-based programming. We've had incredible success with incorporating strong civics education across the state. Thousands of students are benefiting from that. I can't speak to, I think, what the second part is, which is the UT Center that was announced previously. But in terms of our K-12 programs, those will continue into the future and expand.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. We're going to wrap up with Andy right over here.
Hey, Governor. In terms of the incidents in Chattanooga, Mayor Kelly has called for mandatory background checks on gun prohibiting high-capacity magazines. And while he was, I think, he was speaking to the federal level, Tennessee could take those steps. Why not take those kinds of steps? Do you think that those kinds of steps would help?
This is the first step that we're taking. There are a lot of different opinions about whether or not certain actions actually have an effect on what's occurred here. I spoke with Mayor Kelly and offered the ability for us to work together on ways that we can to eliminate violence in Chattanooga and gun violence in Chattanooga. And we will be working together. We already have begun that process. But we are not, again, we are not looking at gun restrictions or gun laws as a part of this school safety plan going forward.
Guns are what set this country apart, Governor. Why do you ignore all of the facts?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
What do you think sets us apart, Governor? Other countries have mental health issues. My kid is here. How do I send my kid to school when you're not doing anything about guns, Governor? Why does anybody need an AR-15, Governor? Why does anybody need an AR-15?